The night began with rain and a quiet ending Emma Collins did not expect, and as she stepped out onto a Seattle street washed in silver reflections, the city felt larger and colder than it had that morning. Because a few hours earlier she had believed her life was steady and now it felt suddenly loose, like a button torn from a coat, and she walked without a clear plan, her phone heavy in her pocket with a final message she did not want to read again, her thoughts racing but saying nothing kind. And when the rain grew sharper she ducked into a small cafe near the waterfront, a place with fogged windows and soft lights that made time slow down just enough to breathe. And she chose a corner seat because corners felt safe, ordered tea because it was familiar, and stared at the steam as if it could lift the weight from her chest, while outside cars passed and inside a few late customers spoke in low voices, and Emma tried to tell herself that endings were normal and that she would be fine. But the truth was her hands shook and her heart ached in a way that surprised her, because she had been strong for so long, and now strength felt far away, and as she sat there she noticed 3 men at a nearby table not because they were loud or flashy but because their energy felt warm, like a small fire in a dark room, and they laughed quietly, shared stories with easy turns, and listened to one another in a way that felt rare, and Emma caught herself watching without meaning to, not out of attraction at first but out of curiosity, because they reminded her of something she had lost that night, a sense of ease, and while she looked away quickly, embarrassed by her own drifting thoughts, she felt a small pull toward the sound of human connection, and just then the barista slipped and water spilled near her feet, breaking her stillness, and before Emma could stand, one of the men rose and offered help with a calm smile that held no judgment, only care, and in that brief exchange of words, simple and kind, something shifted inside her, as if the night had cracked open just a little, and while she returned to her seat and wrapped her fingers around the warm cup, she became aware that she was no longer completely alone, not because someone had fixed her pain but because the world had quietly reminded her that kindness could still appear without warning. And as the rain softened and the cafe clock ticked forward, Emma felt the night pulling her towards something unknown. Something that felt less heavy than before, and she did not yet know why these 3 strangers mattered or how deeply this short moment would stay with her, but she sensed, in a way that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with hope, that the night was not finished with her yet. Daniel Harper returned to his table after helping Emma, but the small moment had already shifted the air between them, and when Marcus Reed noticed her hesitant smile, he offered a friendly nod that carried ease instead of pressure, and Noah Bennett simply observed quietly, sensing that the night was fragile for her, and when Emma stood to refill her tea, Marcus casually asked if the rain had caught her by surprise. A simple question that opened a door she didn't plan to walk through, yet she answered honestly, and soon she found herself standing near their table, not pulled by desire but by the comfort of voices that felt steady, and Daniel introduced himself first, speaking with calm respect, explaining they were just finishing a late conversation after work, nothing special, yet the way he said it made it feel important, and Marcus added warmth with humor, joking about how the cafe felt like a pause button in the city, while Noah listened and smiled softly, choosing his words carefully when he spoke, and Emma realized she was no longer watching the clock or thinking about the message in her phone, because the talk moved easily from small things to deeper ones without crossing any lines, and Daniel spoke about learning patience after rushing through life for years. Marcus shared how starting over in a new city taught him that confidence grows slowly, and Noah spoke about writing at night because silence helped him hear himself better. And Emma shared just enough about her evening to be understood without exposing wounds she was not ready to touch, and instead of offering advice or sympathy, they gave her something better, space to exist without fixing, and the cafe felt warmer, the lights softer, the rain less sharp against the windows, and time moved faster than it should have, and Emma felt a strange mix of calm and energy, as if her heart was waking up from a long sleep, and she noticed how different they were from one another yet balanced. Daniel steady like an anchor, Marcus bright like a spark, Noah thoughtful like a quiet road at night, and none of them tried to impress her or claim her attention, which made the attention feel genuine, and when laughter rose it was shared, not forced, and when silence came it was comfortable, not awkward, and Emma felt herself leaning into the moment without fear, realizing how rare it was to be surrounded by people who asked nothing and still gave so much, and as the barista announced the cafe would close soon, a small sense of loss passed through her, surprising her again, because she had walked in wanting to disappear, and now she wished the night could stretch just a little longer. And as they stood to leave, Daniel held the door. Marcus teased lightly about the rain finally giving up, and Noah met Emma's eyes with a look that said some moments matter even if they are brief. And as they stepped outside into the clean night air, Emma felt different than she had an hour earlier, not healed, not fixed, but steadier, as if something inside her had shifted back into place. And she did not yet know why these three men would stay in her thoughts or why this simple meeting felt important. But she sensed that the night had given her more than comfort. It had given her a reminder of connection, and that alone made the moment unforgettable. The rain had stopped completely by the time they stepped onto the sidewalk, and the street felt washed and quiet, as if the city itself was listening. And Emma stood there with them under the soft glow of a streetlight, realizing she had not checked her phone once since joining their table, and that alone felt strange and freeing. And Marcus stretched his arms and joked about how Seattle nights always fooled people into deep talks, while Daniel smiled and agreed, saying some places invited honesty without asking. And Noah looked toward the water, noting how calm it seemed after the storm, and Emma felt the moment tightening gently, like the final notes of a song, and yet none of them rushed to end it. So they lingered, talking about small dreams they once had and the bigger ones they were still afraid to say out loud. And Daniel admitted he used to believe success meant control but now understood it meant balance, and Marcus shared that confidence came from surviving mistakes, not avoiding them. And Noah spoke softly about writing stories that never got published but still mattered because they were true. And Emma listened closely, feeling something inside her shift with every word, because no one spoke over her thoughts or filled the space with noise. And when she shared how the night had started badly and how she felt unsteady walking into the cafe, they did not ask questions or search for details, they simply acknowledged it with respect. And Daniel told her that some nights were meant to pass through, not solve. And Marcus added that pain did not erase a person's value. And Noah said that moments of kindness often appeared quietly, without explanation. And Emma felt her throat tighten, not from sadness but from gratitude, because she realized how rare it was to feel understood without being examined. And the air felt lighter around them, and for the first time that night she laughed freely, not carefully, and that sound surprised her most of all. And as they walked slowly down the block together, not heading anywhere specific, Emma noticed how natural it felt to be among them, as if the night had arranged this meeting without asking permission. And they spoke about music playing in late-night drives, about missed chances that later made sense, about the strange comfort of strangers who never judged. And Emma thought about how earlier she had felt invisible and now felt present, not because she was the center of attention but because she was part of something shared. And when they reached the corner where their paths would split, the realization arrived gently but clearly that this moment would end. And Emma felt a soft ache again, but this time it wasn't heavy, it was warm, like a reminder rather than a wound. And Daniel thanked her for joining them, saying the night had been better because of her presence. And Marcus smiled and said he hoped she would remember this night whenever rain felt overwhelming. And Noah looked at her with calm sincerity and said that some nights change us quietly. And Emma nodded, holding their words carefully, because she knew they mattered. And there were no promises exchanged, no numbers written down, no attempts to turn the moment into something it wasn't, and that made it feel honest. And as they stood there one last second, Emma understood that what made the night special was not romance or attraction in the usual way, but the simple truth that three different men had shown her kindness without expectation, strength without pride, and warmth without demand. And as they finally said goodbye and walked away in different directions, Emma watched their figures fade into the city, feeling fuller than she had all evening. And she turned toward her car with a calm step, knowing that the pain she carried had not vanished, but it had softened, reshaped by connection. And she realized that sometimes an amazing night is not about what happens, but about what changes inside you. And as she drove home through quiet streets, Emma held onto that feeling, knowing she would carry this night with her not as a dramatic story, but as a steady memory of humanity, one that reminded her she was never as alone as she once believed. Days passed and then weeks moved forward, and life returned to its usual rhythm, yet the night stayed quietly present in Emma Collins's mind, not as a fantasy or a regret but as a steady reminder of something real. And as she returned to work, walked the same streets, and sat alone with her thoughts again, She noticed that the sharp edge of her heartbreak had softened, because whenever doubt crept in, she remembered the calm voices, the shared laughter, and the respect that had filled that rainy evening. And she realized that healing did not always arrive through grand moments or new relationships, but often through brief encounters that restored faith. And Emma found herself smiling more easily, listening better, and feeling less guarded with the world. And one afternoon, as she sat by the window of her apartment watching clouds drift across the sky, she understood that those three men had not changed her life by staying in it, but by reminding her that she still belonged to it. And she thought about Daniel's steady presence, Marcus's warmth, and Noah's quiet honesty, each of them leaving a different imprint on her memory, not as romantic figures but as symbols of kindness, balance, and understanding. And she felt grateful that the night had remained pure and unclaimed, untouched by expectations or promises, because it allowed the meaning to stay simple and true. And when friends later asked how she was doing, Emma answered honestly, saying she was learning to move forward, and she meant it, because she no longer felt broken, only changed. And as she continued living her days, she noticed that she was more open to moments, more patient with herself, and more aware of how small gestures could carry deep impact. And she began to believe again in connection, not the kind that rushed or demanded, but the kind that appeared quietly and left gently. And one evening when rain returned to the city, Emma walked past the same cafe and paused for a moment, not to go inside, but to acknowledge what had happened there, and she smiled, feeling warmth instead of sadness. And she whispered a soft thank you to the night that had surprised her when she needed it most. And as she continued down the street, she felt certain of one thing, that some memories are not meant to pull us backward, but to push us forward. And this one had done exactly that, turning an almost broken night into a shared moment of humanity she would always carry, not as a secret, but as a quiet strength that reminded her she was never alone in the world.